Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Nishida versus Donsua fight. And so, if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, going into this fight, Nishida is 9-0 with 1 KO, and Donsua is 16-0 with 7 KOs. This fight is for the IBF World Bantamweight title. Nishida's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Rodriguez, and Donsua's last fight was a win via TKO in round 8 versus Mozar Fariko Sarawi. Nishida is a southpaw. This is in Nishida's home country of Japan, and to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, obviously, like I mentioned, this is for that IBF World Bantamweight title in a time in which the Bantamweight division, alongside all the other lower weight divisions, are in an entertaining position. They are getting pushed well. They are having themselves become big names. You have the likes of Nakatani in the bantamweight division, who has become a big name and is a big star in Japan as well. And then, of course, you look at an Inoue as well, who, of course, in the super bantamweight division is doing excellent things as well, and has this big fight coming up himself. And I'm sure it's going to sell well in Japan again, and I'm sure he's going to probably have some world title action on his undercard. I'm not too sure if that's been announced or not, but nonetheless, like I say, this fight is a fight in which is interesting because it's not on top rank. It's not being pushed like the rest of them, not being branded like the rest of them. Perhaps this is Japanese boxing trying to make a star outside of Nakatani, trying to build a brand, build a star outside of Nakatani, because obviously they have Nakatani and they have Inoue. Other than that, a lot of them are good fighters, very good fighters, the world champions, but they haven't really made a kind of big name for themselves. You now look at a Satsumi, a Takai, Olaskuga. A lot of them haven't really made these kind of big names for themselves outside of being, just a similar fighter from a lower weight division to that of Nakatani or Inoue. And so, like I say, it's interesting to see how they're trying to push them like a Nishida perhaps away from these top ranked fights until they've built themselves a bit more as a name, as a brand, and they're still early on in their career. There's no real rush to make these big unification fights. Perhaps that's a little bit frustrating because I think they would be very easy to be made, and they could be excellent fights in which would bring a big crowd and would be entertainment into the division, but there's no real rush to make them from what it seems. There's development fights perhaps still needed from Nishida, I think. Perhaps they look at Nishida's performance versus Rodriguez and think, he performed well against a very good fighter, and a fighter who was ranked highly in the division, a fighter who's had lots of top fights, and he fought well against him. It's just certain things may have needed to be changed, certain things may have needed to be developed, and like I say, there is no rush for him to be pushed into these big unification fights. A fight like a Donsua is interesting because, of course, he's a Thailand fighter. He's never fought out of Thailand, and there's quite a lot of fighters like that who have these padded records, haven't really fought outside of Thailand. Of course, we've just seen not too long ago Nakatani face one and be able to win easily, but he had a much better record on paper, that kind of 76-1 or something like that, something crazy like that. But Donsua, of course, like I say, 16-0, taking a world title fight because he has the opportunity given to him, because he's got this ranking. There's quite a lot of undiscovered Thai talent who's got a quite padded record against opponents who are much lesser, and this will be a big step up for himself. And then also has minimal tape on him. He's got a bit you can watch, and I was able to watch a couple of his fights, and he doesn't look like a bad fighter, and he has been getting good wins. They've been better fights in which some of the fights in which I've seen in the from Thailand and things like that. But like I say, in general, quite a padded record, like I say, with minimal tape. But he's managed to get himself a world ranking. He's ranked 14 in the IBF, and that's been enough to be able to get a world ranking. I don't really think there's too many kind of top names ranked in the IBF rankings, so perhaps that makes sense as like a development fight, like I mentioned. But still, on paper, a tough fighter. Two undefeated guys going at it, going against each other. So, of course, it's going to be an interesting contest. Of course, like I said, Nishida fighting in Japan. Majority of these fights by these Japanese fighters are in Japan at the moment, and they're kind of bringing other fighters along to fight them. And perhaps on paper, you see some of them as fights as in are very one-sided, like perhaps you would see this one. But I think they do seem to always make for quite good, quite entertaining contests, and I'm sure this one has the capabilities of being that. And Nishida as a fighter, to speak about him kind of individually as a fighter, he's he's a good fighter. He's followed off his jab well. He kind of goes for them explosive, kind of like I say, following off the jab a lot of the time, punching through the guard, good straight shots, and individually good chopping hooks as well. Quite typically will end combinations with a nice chopping hook and be able to land quite nicely, land quite cleanly, and then be able to carry on from there. And he did that versus Rodriguez nicely. He closed the distance fast as well. Like I said, that kind of explosive, following off his jab, kind of maybe leaning back on the back foot a bit and then being able to spring off upon it and then be able to get in your face from there. I think he plants his feet well at the same time as well. When he does want to plant his feet, I think he's not the most powerful of individuals, and I don't think fighters are going to really respect his power. But I do think he plants his feet relatively well when he goes into his combinations, and he twists into his shots nicely. So the technique in which he's throwing them, just because perhaps they're not getting guys out of there, and on paper it isn't seen like the most powerful, they still look and are thrown well and are thrown with a good ability and a good knowledge of how to throw punches, and so it's not bad upon the eye. It's quite nice upon the eye, to be honest. He's typically quite an in-close or mid-range type fighter. I believe he can kind of fight either of the two and have success at either of the two as well. He goes to the body well. I think he'll quite often execute nice body shots and be able to change things up and switch levels and things like that. But so does Donsua as well, so it could be interesting to see if they both try and do that. He's always throwing in combinations, Nishida, and always trying to have success with their combinations. He's often able to get the better of the combinations as well when he is throwing, and that's something which is going to win you fights if you are able to have the better continuity of combinations. And he's got, in general, I believe, good punch variation as well. Negatives about him, I think he leaves himself open quite a lot, and when he doesn't tie up when needed, and I don't think he cover ups when needed as well. Sometimes you have to cover up, you have to tie up, you can't just be continually taking punches, taking pressure, especially when you have quite a low guard and you're leaving yourself quite open. Rodriguez had success from doing that versus Nishida. When he did back him up, Nishida just didn't really try and cover up or anything. If Rodriguez took a backward step to create more space, Nishida would kind of just clumber onto him and just take a few steps, take a few punches off that, and then kind of try and type with him. But doesn't really seem like he's able to type too well as well. He's not that physical, and I think the physicality of Rodriguez was able to cause Rodriguez success at times. And Donsua, from what I've seen, can be quite a physical fighter, so he could have success from there. He can be predictable when he leaves out his jab. Sometimes he will leave out his jab and then just get caught with another shot because he's trying to measure the distance and just leave out his punches. And you see a lot of fighters do that sometimes. It's a nice thing to do in the way of you're going to be able to find your distance, you're going to be able to measure what you have to do, and you're going to be able to follow up on your punches at well. But you can quite often leave it out there too long, get caught with a counter, and it just look quite silly, to be honest, because you are just leaving that jab out there for no reason and just completely leaving yourself quite wide open for hooks, overhands, or something like that. He can have a lack of a jab. He can sometimes forget his jab, so he either can leave it out for too long or he can forget it. He can get drawn into a fight, and I think perhaps that would go into Donsua's favour. I don't think Donsua is crazily wanting this kind of big brawling type fight, but I think it would definitely go into his favour if it did end up like that. He can have his head on the line. Like I say, when he's stunned, when he's taken some punches, I just don't think he reacts the best defensively when he does. So it's just interesting to see if Donsu is able to hurt him or if anybody's able to hurt him, how he would react if he would just kind of, like I say, lumber forwards and take a lot of punches and take a lot of punishment. It's not going to be good in the long run. If he is against a power punch, he could definitely get finished because of what he's doing. And in general, like I say, his power isn't anything too excellent. So even if he is coming with these chopping hooks, like I mentioned, or if he is planting his feet well, opponents aren't really respecting his power, and a lot of the time are able to keep walking through. And if he is trying to go into any type of a brawl or any type of a fight like that, then I think he could definitely get out thrown or out punched with the power that he does possess. Donsua as a fighter though, he reacts well with his jab. It's quite nice to see because sometimes he would just be waiting, he will be waiting, and then he would just be out of range where he can kind of slip back and then slip forwards with his jab, and it's a nice thing to be able to do. It's quite clean on the eye to see, and if he's able to do that versus Nishida, like I say, if Nishida leaves out a jab, then he could definitely have success. Donsua, he walks you down. He does seem to be a kind of controlling of the center, walking down type fighter. He's got a high guard, so a lot of the time it's going to be quite difficult to land really clean on him. Even though if he is kind of in your face a lot of the time, it's going to be still difficult to land clean upon him. He's willing to go to the body, and he's gotten some quite nice knockouts from that. At least one of the ones in which I saw was against the debutant. He went to the body very nicely and kind of just crumbled him off of that, and that was, like I say, nice to see on the eye. He ups the pace when he gets you on the ropes. If he is able to, like I say, back you up and get you up upon the ropes, he will definitely up the pace and try and let off a few shots off of that. And Nishida might be willing to accept the backwards step, being on the back foot against Donsua, so it could be interesting to see how that goes. And I think he has explosive power. Like I say, he's able to up the pace at different times, and I think the power is quite explosive. He's a physical pressure type guy, which, like I say, could definitely go into Donsua's favour over that of Nishida, who, like I've been mentioning, isn't the most physical of guys, and he's willing to go toe to toe and probably wanted to go toe to toe, and he definitely won't respect you as a fighter. And I think if he's able to keep coming forwards like the way that he does, he definitely could have success coming forwards. Negatives about him, I think finding his range can sometimes be a problem. If he's trying to use his jab or anything like that, it can be a problem finding range for himself. His defensive movement is very limited. Like I say, he's definitely going to be there to be hit. He will just kind of, like I say, walk you down, stand in front of you. Typically, he's a slow starter and he wants to fight at quite a slow tempo as well. He's quite comfortable just walking forwards and picking the shots at his own pace. But if Nishida, who does have the much faster hands, is able to fight at a faster pace and in general, like it has a better type of punch variation and can do better work on in that aspect than Donsua, I think he could definitely have success with the slow tempo in which Donsua likes to fight at. He often stands quite straight up as well, again linking to the fact that he is going to be there to hit and he's going to be quite easy to be hit. He's a flat-footed type fighter as well. He doesn't really create many angles or go for many angles. Sometimes he'll find openings, like I said, to the body, but he's not really the type of guy to be in close and trying to look for the angles, trying to move his body around to do that. He's just kind of straight up throwing, throwing, throwing. And it's like I say, not. It means a lot of it can get caught on the gloves if you're able to put up a guard, even if it is quite a weak guard. So we'll see if Nishida does that. I think he admires his work quite a lot as well. And Nishida, who, like I say, has the faster hands, if he's able to land counters, he could definitely catch Donsua just admiring his work a bit. He kind of only really throws one big power punch if he gets you on the ropes. Like I say, he's able to have that explosive power and up the pace, but he'll throw a few kind of patty shots and then just one big one, and then he'll just kind of walk around, follow you around again, and not really cut off the ring as well, and just only throw one kind of power punch, like I say, follow you around off of that. Uh, Nishida is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Nishida will win via TKO in round 4. I think Donsua, perhaps if he was a bit more skilled, would be able to cause a bit more of a threat for somebody like Nishida, but I think Nishida is just going to continuously be able to pick up any kind of shots that he wants on the back foot. I think Donsua is going to be too slow of a pace for Nishida. I think Nishida is going to be able to land to the body quite cleanly upon him. Obviously, he's going to have to get through the guard of Donsua, but I think if he's able to do that, he could definitely land them better shots, go with good combinations, lead off them combinations, and have success. If he's the attacking fighter, putting on the fast pace, it's just not going to be something that Donsua is there prepared for. Again, like I said, these Thai fighters, because they haven't been tested and because they have had so many fights, they get so used to a style that they just don't really develop the same kind of way. And you want to see fighters develop and improve throughout fights and kind of change their style to see what works, what doesn't. But if you're just kind of getting these padded records against these similar type of opponents, you're just not going to see the same development, and it's just gonna hinder careers. And I think Nishida, like I say, is going to be able to win comfortably by TKO in round 4. It wouldn't surprise me if it's some sort of body shot or something like that. Then we could go on to fight next. Possibly someone like a Takuma Inoue. I would quite enjoy that fight, and perhaps we're going to see him versus Satsumi next as a rematch. We'll see, because the first fight was an entertaining fight, and then Takuma, of course, is a big name in his own right because of mainly because of his brother's name, but in general, he is a big name, so perhaps that could be made. That could be something that may happen next. But if not, then the Nishida versus Takuma Inoue could be a good fight as well. They may be keen to get Takuma back into these world title fights, and perhaps if they see Sutsumi as a tough test to be able to deal with, they might prefer to go for something like a Nishida. And Takuma is still ranked highly in the IBF rankings, so that could be a fight to be made, and that could be an interesting contest down the line. If not, something like a Masuda is also ranked quite well in the IBF rankings. Like I said, I was looking around the IBF rankings trying to see who could be an option. Like I said, I don't think they'll probably go for unification fights next. I'd love to see a Nakatani fight versus Nishida. I think that could be a great contest between the two of them. Of course, Nakatani, WBC champion, that could be great to see. And I think Nakatani hasn't got too much longer of a window where he can still become undisputed. And I think he could, especially because there are all different champions, I would love to see him just go one after the other. But I just don't necessarily see if that's going to happen. So perhaps a fight versus Nishida could happen next, but not too sure. Like I say, if not, a Masuda fight could happen. He's, I believe, 9-1 and only loss being versus Satsumi. So, that's not a bad loss. That's not a loss in which he's going to look bad upon his career, especially at the moment in what Satsumi's been able to achieve. And since then, he's had, I believe 3 or 4 knockouts. So, he's been able to rebuild himself and get himself back in highly in the rankings. And that could be another contest against, like I say, a similar type of opponent in the way of similar type of record. And a lot of these Japanese fighters in the lower weight divisions are becoming a world champion without having too much pro experience. So perhaps a Matsuda fight could happen next. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like it if you did, like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.